Hey everyone, Bank of Bricks here. Welcome to my second video for this Halloween season. You all seemed to enjoy my last video where I turned some of horror's most iconic films into Lego sets. So I figured I'd come back and finish what I started. There are still quite a few movies I've yet to cover, and just like the last video, we're going to stick to a sort of timeline. Now before I jump right into more distressing dioramas, let me once again explain how I design and render these sets. I use a free program called stud.io or Studio. This program allows me to build any set or idea I could possibly come up with, using a vast catalog of pieces at my and your disposal. A pretty sick feature of Studio is its sister program, the Studio Part Designer, where you can create printed pieces and even design your very own minifigures too important to Studio. Finally, you're able to render your creations with Studio's very own built-in software, in order to create your very own scenes. I'm not sponsored by Studio, I just think it's a great program, and maybe after watching this video, you'll want to use it to recreate your favorite kaiju film, shaky handheld horror, or ghastly ghost flick. One last warning, this video will contain full spoilers for each mentioned movie. Before Jason, and even before Michael, and quite a bit after Psycho. One movie truly gave inspiration to aspiring horror filmmakers. 1974 saw the release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the first films to spawn the trend of pretending its events were real. This 70s slasher saw a group of unlucky teens fall victim to the crazed cannibal Sawyer family. This film even ends with our sole survivor being one of, if not the first, final girl characters in horror. Enough of background. Let's move on to the dioramas I've designed. My first set is based off the dinner scene, a disturbing moment in the film where our main character is tormented and begs for her life, to no avail from the crazed Sawyers, who are far beyond reason. I've done my best to implement the unique decorations seen throughout the house, with various bones, antlers, taxidermied animals, and people. Our figures would be the tormented Sally, along with the members of the family, including the hitchhiker, Newbin Sawyer, the cook, Drayton Sawyer, the not-so-mobile Grandpa Sawyer, and of course, the main attraction of these films, Bubba Sawyer, seen here in his dinner outfit and face. Our next set would be based off the Hook Room. This is where the unlucky people of the group go from friends to food. I've included the butcher's table, freezer, window, and tool rack. Of course, the hooks themselves, which pierce our unlucky figures straight through the shoulder. This reminds me of something. This set's figures would of course have Leatherface, seen here in his most iconic outfit, along with the unlucky Kirk and Pam. Moving on ahead to 1979, we go from Texas to extraterrestrials with the first Alien film. This movie sees a spaceship crew encounter a distress call, which leads them to a gruesome fate. H.R. Geiger created this film's eerie, iconic, and psychosexual creature designs. Let us see the first stage of its life cycle. The Xenomorph begins life in its egg sac, seen here in my diorama of the deserted ship where the eggs are first found. The crowded interior is filled with these pieces to mimic the fog that is abundant in the ship's lower area. After emerging from the eggs, the second stage of the Xenomorph is known as the facehugger, as it latches onto and impregnates its host via their mouth. Our sole spacesuit-clad figure, Kane, is the first one to be gifted by the facehuggers. From a desolated ship to one filled with banter. My next diorama takes place in the kitchen of the Nostromo, the ship in which our crew calls home. Their meal is interrupted in one of the most brutal and exciting scenes in film history, when Kane introduces us to the next stage in Xenomorph development. The chest burster does as its name suggests, and kills Kane in a visceral and vile fashion. That is not the end of the line for our alien. No. As it continues to grow into its fully developed form, the Xenomorph is one of the best creature designs in film, and I hope I've done justice with its Lego form. The kitchen itself is littered with plates and cups filled with the not very appetizing food of the future. This diorama's walls are the most different, as I've done my best to try and replicate the ship's rounded shape above its doorways. Speaking of which, I've simply used these printed tiles to imply the further back areas of this ship. Before going on to our figures, I of course must mention Jonesy the cat. truly the best character in all of the Alien movies. Now for the crew of the Nostromo, we have the ill-fated Kane, the reliable hero, Ellen Ripley, the engineers, Parker and Brett, the commanding officer, Captain Dallas, the navigator and transgender icon, Lambert, and the synthetic android, Ash. From Up in Space to the Realm of Dreams, let us cover the most iconic slasher I've left out so far. 1984 saw the release of A Nightmare on Elm Street, featuring the man, the myth, the legend, Freddy Krueger. Donning his clawed glove, this charred child killer stalks the dreams of his victims and picks them off in brutal and creative ways. My first diorama is based on the first movie, where Tina is lifted into the air and dies in what may be the most iconic kill in the franchise. Slammed into our other figure Glenn and then forced up onto the wall, and then the roof. Tina dies to Freddy, but to all others, he was never there. Freddy Krueger is of course this set's final figure, with his signature sweater and knife-clawed glove. From the most iconic kill to my personal favorite, we must move on to the third Nightmare film, Dream Warriors. We're in a psychiatric ward. One patient, Tina, notices something is a little up with the regularly scheduled programming. Of course, it's our old pal Freddy, who turns this TV into a clawed monster, which I love the design of. Two heads make contact with the TV. Freddy's pops out and Tina's goes in, killing the poor girl. She would come with the cigarette she uses to burn herself, and Freddy would have his normal and TV form. From one horror comedy series to another, we continue on to 1987's Evil Dead 2. I've skipped the first movie as the second one is a sort of remake of the first. This series sees the dashing Ash Williams fight off the evil Deadites, an evil clone, and his very own hand. Let us travel to the cabin for our first set. The boarded up window and door help keep the Deadites out of this diorama. I've done what I could to include the signature details of the cabin's interior, from trapdoor to fireplace and possessed deer head. This set would come with a printed tile or piece to recreate the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead, clad in skin and inked in blood. This set's figures would include Annie, the possessed Henrietta, and of course, Ash himself, equipped with boomstick and chainsaw hand. 1992's Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness, sees Ash transported back to the medieval era, where he must recover the Necronomicon. He is unfortunately captured by Lord Arthur, along with releasing the Deadites from the book, who are now led by the undead Evil Ash. My diorama would take place near the end of the film, featuring a segment of the castle wall, along with rubble and a dead evil skeleton. This set's figures would be Ash, donning armor and a new gauntlet-like hand, Lord Arthur, the possessed Sheila, who Ash has to attempt to free from the Deadites' control, and Evil Ash, the undead answer to the Chosen One. 1996 saw the slasher genre change forever with the infamous Scream, mocking and commentating on the often used tropes of the genre. The original Scream is my all-time favorite slasher. Let us begin with the beginning of the movie, where the scab Casey Becker meets her end. But first, we must deal with an onslaught of fun calls and horror trivia to save her and her unlucky boyfriend's life. This set would combine the kitchen, living room, and exterior portions of Casey's house, with details like popcorn and knives on the kitchen island, and TV where Casey tries to hide next to. This set would feature Casey, her boyfriend Steve, and the masked killer, Ghostface. Our next diorama would be based on Stu's mansion, where the last act of the movie takes place. This set would primarily be the living room with its couches and TV, which I've even included a little Michael Myers design on, along with the kitchen with even more popcorn. What's a set without its figures? This set would of course have one of horror's best final girls, Sidney Prescott, the two faces of Ghostface, the greasy-haired Billy Loomis, and the unforgettable Stu Macher. The ever-suspicious Randy Meeks makes an appearance, and the most punchable reporter, Gail Weathers, would round out our figures. I think I've covered a pretty good timeline of the history of horror, including the iconic along with some of my favorites. Speaking of, let me know your favorite slasher and horror movies down in the comments. As I've already said, I love Scream, And The Thing is my all-time favorite horror movie. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support you gave the last video. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. And if you want to see even more LEGO content like this in the future, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. I'll see you next time.